So I'm about to start using Citristrip, which is a stripping gel that you can supposedly use indoors, but I still like to use it out just because of the fumes. So they tell you to put it in a bowl. In my experience, it works better. Just kind of slop some on like this. And then I bought a cheap little brush. I don't know if foam brushes would work, but this one was certainly not more expensive than a foam brush. And I am brushing it on. This is my first time using it on paint, so I'll be excited to see what it does there. But in my experience, you don't want it to be too thick or too thin. Like most things, moderation is good. But if it's too thin, it just kind of turns into a waxy crust. And if it's too thick, it doesn't actually work into whatever you're trying to strip off, and just kind of sits on top. So the ideal thing is to get it enough so that it works into the surface, and it has some time to work on whatever you're trying to remove, in this case paint and varnish, but not so thick that you're just stripping it off instead of the material you're trying to remove. So I think that looks pretty good. Interestingly, so you can see there already where I had kind of slopped it on, it's already started to eat through. So I just want to work it in a little bit. I might put a little bit more on, but I think this is pretty good, and I'm going to let it sit for about 20 to 30 minutes. They say 30 minutes to 2 hours, but in my experience 30 minutes is probably good enough. So then I'm going to take this, and I'm not going to clean it. I'm going to go wrap it in saran wrap right away and just use this one brush for the whole project. So I'll see you in a bit. So it's been about 30 minutes, and you can see here that it has really done a nice job on the paint and even on the varnish down here. It's cracked. You can see it's bled through to the varnish here. You can still see some of the pink, which means it's still a little bit wet, but it's a pretty good coat. It didn't dry too much. It didn't stay too wet. My next step is going to be to take a paint scraper, and they recommend that you use a plastic one so you don't gouge the wood. This is a pretty thin veneer here. I mean, you can see the veneer there. So I'm going to use a metal one because it frankly just works better, but I'm not going to push real hard. You'll notice I'm wearing a glove. I'm going to have a glove on the other hand too. And then as I push, I'm going to wipe the blade off with some paper towel and just chuck it in the trash right away. Some people will just push it right off onto the ground. I just find this is easier to clean up. So I can't really film and do it, but I did want to kind of just push a little bit and show you what it looks like. So there, and look at that, just beautiful underneath. This worked really well. So I'll just chuck that in the trash right away. But the Citristrip stuff works pretty great, especially on paint. And I'm not going to have to sand too much to get that pretty clean to where it can take stain. So anyway, I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I've finished. Okay, so that's one application, that's one round, and it looks pretty good already. You can see there's still some stain down here on the edges of this veneer, but this is all going to get covered with a piece of molding anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. You can see things like that's clearly some kind of a dent in the veneer that will have to be picked up with sanding. And again, I have to be sort of careful, just it's not a very thick veneer, so I don't want to sand down through it. But even on the edges, it's sort of leaked down a little, and you can see how well it's worked even on the edges here that I wasn't really applying it to. So it's a pretty good little product. I'm probably going to do another application of it here and just see if I can get the rest of this that's sort of in the grain a little bit more picked up, so that when I sand it'll be pretty clean and white, and then it'll accept the new stain pretty well. So I'll show you some more progress videos in a bit. Okay, so there it is, stripped to the appropriate level of doneness. Not completely bare wood again, you can still see some stain there, but I'm going to be putting a darker stain on, so it's good. But I would say 1 to 2 coats of the Citristrip all around does pretty well. So there you go. Alright, so I'm about to put the stain on. I'm using Minwax gel stain, mahogany color. This is actually hard to find because Lowe's stopped carrying it for some reason. But you get it out, and it's pretty liquid now, but it comes out as a gel that you have to stir. They tell you to put it on with a brush. I actually recommend this method, which is to take some old socks and wear a glove, And you just kind of dip the sock in and get a little bit of the stain on. And then I'm just going to sort of start applying it. And they say, you know, put it on and wait for 3 to 5 minutes. I tried that and ended up with kind of a sticky mess. So I think the best way is just to sort of work it in like this. And you can see I'm getting pretty good color. The sock will eventually get saturated, so you move to a new spot. And when this sock is all gunked up, you just toss it out and get a new one. So save your old athletic socks and you can reuse them for home improvement projects.